My name is Bruce Fealk. I'm the host of Michigan Progress. This is another in our series of election specials. We're going to have with us this afternoon Jane Boudreau. She's a candidate for the Oakland County Sheriff. She's running against Republican Mike Bouchard. Welcome to the show, Jane.
How are you today?
Good. Jane is running for Oakland County Sheriff, and if elected, she would be the first female sheriff of Oakland County. Jane and many of her in her family have spent their lives in law enforcement. So why don't you tell us first about your family and about all the law enforcement experience you have in your family and some of your own law enforcement experience.
Okay. Well, to begin, I actually am really deep-rooted in Oakland County. I grew up here, was born here, and actually from the Pontiac-Waterford area. My family actually, my maiden name is Felice from the Felices Market, and my godfather owned a business here as well as my father and my uncle. And kind of the earliest memories that I have as far as law enforcement is, I had cousins that were police officers, but my dad's best friend and a lot of his good friends were also police officers. And I remember just being at the Pontiac Police Department all the time with my dad as a young kid, because he'd go and see his buddy who was working the desk as a lieutenant, and my dad would come home from the store, pick me up, and then take me and hang out at the police department, talk to his buddy, and take off. So I've always had a really strong bond with police officers. I was never, I was brought up where I was never afraid of police officers, and with that, I think there's about 13 of us now, one other female that works for the sheriff's office, but I have a cousin that's a commander with the city of Chicago. My cousin just retired from Burton. One just retired as a lieutenant from West Bloomfield. One just retired from Waterford. So we've been in it a long time. So, and I was with the sheriff's office for approximately 18 and a half years.
And you were with the Oakland County Sheriff's
Office? I was with the Oakland County Sheriff's Office, but before that I was with the Pontiac Police Department. So I've been in law enforcement 24 years.
Okay, so what did you do for the Oakland County Sheriff's Department when you were working here?
Well, when I first started at the Sheriff's Office, I hired in as a part-time officer working the Marine Division, and most of our Marine deputies, with the exception of a core group, are part-time officers. And I had just graduated from the Oakland Police Academy, and coming from Pontiac, there was kind of a turbulent time where there was a residency requirement, and I wasn't quite sure that I wanted to bring my kids up in the same area that I was going to be arresting people and taking them to jail. And I didn't want to have to sit and not move around. And I felt like if I stayed there, I was going to have to be there forever. So I wanted the opportunity that if I decided to move or if I got married, that I could move where I wanted to move. So I went to the sheriff's office, but working at the Marine Division, then I was hired in full-time. And at the sheriff's office, the one thing that happens is that you actually hire into our corrections division. So I hired into corrections, and back in the day when I got hired in 1987 full-time, actually the corrections deputies, as they are now, we were called service agents. And so we were not like a certified position. If you were a certified police officer, you could lose your certification in the jail. But I hired in there and was promoted right away when I took the first test, and actually promoted at that time to a Deputy 2 status. And I was in the jail probably for about a week after that, so about 18 months total. And at that point I went to the road patrol. So at the sheriff's office I've worked the road patrol. I was a DARE officer, which is the Drug Abuse Resistance Education Program, which I'm really proud of. I was a DARE officer for about 8 years, and actually I was a state president for Michigan DARE. So not only working with kids, but I also worked with law enforcement all across the state, making sure that they were updated in their curriculum, any changes that had to happen, and making sure that we had the training moving forward every year. But worked in patrol services, worked in corrective services. I've worked in satellite services, which encompasses like our boot camp, our circuit court division. I actually was one of the sergeants in charge of our circuit court division for 3.5 years. When I got promoted to sergeant in 1998, John Nichols is the one who promoted me. And John Nichols actually asked me to kind of take a major step at the sheriff's office and become the first female that ever was in charge of a substation at the sheriff's office. And we call those people substation commanders. And it's a pretty prestigious spot because one of the things that you do is you're actually the conduit between the township officials and the sheriff's office. So it's like being a chief of police. I mean, you're maintaining that 36 square mile area, and you are handling the day-to-day operations in that office. And so I was in Oakland Township for approximately little over 2 years. Got a millage passed through there, worked really hard to get the millage passed so that we had additional deputies and officers. And from there, went back to corrections and was a command officer in corrections, and then left there and worked in our training division. So in 20 years, the only place that I have not worked is our technical services division, which is an investigative unit, which I actually have been an investigator, but not particularly in that unit.
Okay, well that sounds like a lot of
stuff.
experience.
I know, a lot of stuff.
Well, we all know that prison reform and the cost of keeping people in prison is a big issue in Michigan, and I assume Oakland County. How would you address the cost of the Oakland County Jail and the overcrowding that's occurring in the Oakland County Jail?
Actually, that's a great question, because, Bruce, I think one of the things that has to happen is we can't just not take people to jail. We can't have officers on the side of the road pulling people over or going to a situation and not having a place to take them. Okay, that's not safe for our community, and it's also not safe when we're starting to let people out of jail because we just have no room. But what we have to do, which is the same as other county sheriffs, and actually not just in Oakland County, not just in the state, but I've talked to sheriffs and undersheriffs across the country, and that's, again, my experience with the DARE program. I've been able to form a lot of bonds and good friendships with law enforcement agencies all over the country. And really, it comes down to working with the judges and working with alternative sentencing programs. I mean, we're going to have to start looking at incarcerated or individuals, inmates, prisoners, bad guys, whatever you want to call them, but we're going to have to, instead of a judge taking, let's say, a 17-year-old who has maybe had a minor in possession and they violate probation, instead of that kid who now a judge, and a lot of times I want to say it's new judges, but sometimes I don't think the judges are really working together as much as they should, but what will happen is we'll get a judge who will sentence a 17-year-old kid to 45 to 60 days in the county jail. We don't have room for 17-year-olds at the county jail. We need to find maybe another place, an alternative program out there, even possibly a tether situation where they're on home incarceration, where they have to call and they have to come in and they have to blow to make sure that they're not using alcohol. I'm not really sure that putting maybe a 17-year-old in the county jail and teaching them where to buy alcohol and where to buy drugs and maybe picking up bad habits.
They network in jail.
Is absolutely, they network in jail. But not only that, but we have such a huge amount of incarcerated people that have mental health issues. And I'm not so sure that the jail is the right spot. But when law enforcement has nowhere to take these people, or you get officers who maybe don't have the experience and don't know what outreach resources there are, the guy's going off, he's calling him a name, he's swinging at him, but did he really intend to do that? Does he have his faculties about him? Is jail the best place? So we need to start working with our judges to make sure that the sentencing that we're giving these people is an accurate sentence. We need to look at working with the prosecutor's office and saying, is it an accurate charge? Are we overcharging? Are we undercharging? Not to say I don't want people charged for breaking the law, but we're going to have to start working together because we don't have the resources. People are not going to want to pay for a tax to expand the jail, especially in this economy. We're going to have to do it better. And I think through education and through prevention programs, one of the things that the current administration has just done is close our regimented boot camp. And I was at the sheriff's office when we opened the boot camp. And the biggest reason that we thought the boot camp was an excellent, division for us is that it stops recidivism. I mean, it's a proven fact. Boot camps will not completely erase recidivism, but it really prevents it. And the second thing is they have a shorter sentence. So you have an inmate who may have done a year, and instead they're doing about 66 days. We can get them in and out faster. We might have to do intensive probation after, but to close the boot camp down, not really a great idea. And I've talked to some of the county commissioners, and I don't think they're all real happy about it.
Something else I noticed on your website, and you make a big deal out of, is taking the politics out of law enforcement.
Yes.
Can you explain what you mean and give us some examples of where politics and law enforcement cross paths and how you do things differently?
It's unfortunate, and I've heard many officers across the state talk about the reason that they didn't get hired in a sheriff's office is because it's too political. I mean, right now, our current sheriff less than 2 years ago, ran for U.S. Senate. He's publicly made comments to the press and Lansing State Journal that he wants to run for governor in 2010. To me, a county as big as ours, with an inmate population of almost 2,000 prisoners, with almost 1,200 employees, we really need a sheriff who's going to have both feet planted in Oakland County and be concerned about the best, the welfare of the community, the employees, and the citizens. And I think that this current administration it's gotten so bad that good law enforcement officers are leaving the department and going elsewhere because they don't feel like they can get a fair shake in a promotional process. That if they, don't donate to political functions or stand behind, financially, this current administration, that they don't move forward, and that's unfortunate. The other issue is there's a huge rift between the deputy sheriff's union right now and the top administration, and the deputies haven't had a contract in over 5 years. And I really believe that the reason that the contract negotiation has been stagnant, the sheriff has not sat one time down with the union president or the county to try to get this contract moved forward, because it's to the point where if you hold the administration accountable, they're upset. They've never really had a union that's held them accountable. And, they're winning arbitrations. Their deputies that have been fired are getting their job back. Out of the last 12 officers that have been fired, 11 of them have gotten their job back with complete back pay and had their benefits paid back. Some are in litigation. And if you talk to law enforcement agencies, and I've talked to many sheriffs and chiefs and said, okay, if you've fired an employee, how many employees, have you gotten back or had to take back? Once in a while, there's just situations where to have over 90% of the employees that you've terminated, fired, and gotten their job back is a really high number.
Yeah.
Is
there politics at play in that process?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's much politics, because if you're not on the right side, there are some officers that have been in trouble in the sheriff's office that nothing happens to. There was an officer that was charged with possession, who got caught with a needle in his arm and was shooting methamphetamine and had a meth lab in his car. He was able to walk away with a 1-year probation on a 20-year felony. If that was somebody that I pulled over on the street, I would guarantee you that person would not be walking away with a meth lab, a working meth lab, on probation. It wouldn't happen.
Is his name on your opponent's campaign donor list? Or?
Well, and I'm not going to say, I'm just going to say that there's a lot of connections with the county, with the family, and there has been. And whether that's true or not, but there's a lot of speculation. And I know that I would, as an investigator, never stand for the fact that, the current sheriff went in front of the county and they did a special talk about methamphetamine in Michigan, and was touted that there has never been a meth lab in this county. Well, it was one of his deputies. There absolutely has been a meth lab in this county. It's documented.
Wow.
So.
Well, let's turn to cheerier subjects.
Cheerier stuff, right?
Yeah. Now, I just ran into your website. Or I heard through the grapevine, I guess, you received the endorsement of the Michigan Police Officers Association, which is a pretty big deal.
Well, it's MAPO, which is a little bit different.
Okay.
The Michigan Association of Police Organizations.
Okay.
Which is 67% of all law enforcement agencies actually belong to that organization, including the state police, Detroit Police, the Detroit Police Officer and Supervisors Association, Warren Police. So yeah, it's a big deal.
And have they endorsed candidates for sheriff before in Oakland County?
They have never endorsed a sheriff in Oakland County, and I know in speaking with the president of the Troopers Association in a letter I received today that I'm the first sheriff candidate in 83 counties, or I'm the only candidate in 83 counties right now that has their endorsement.
So did they share with you? Do you have any inside scoop on what got you what it was about you or your background that got you that endorsement?
Well, I really think just making the concerted effort to talk to the state police, because they're a major player in MAPO. But I think talking to them and seeing my work that I've done through the years with DARE officers, with the state police, DARE used to be run in the state of Michigan by the state police. And when the state police pulled out of it and created their own program, somebody had to pick up the ball. And the DARE program actually went to Michigan State University. But Michigan State University didn't have the resources to continue the conferences and the training and education. So when I was the state president for Michigan DARE, we actually partnered with Michigan State University and did all the conferences. So I think because the transition was so smooth with the state police and the working relationship that I had with troopers, even being on the DARE board, I think that they saw the effort that was made, that I do believe in, that law enforcement agencies really need to work together, and especially, we're all going to lose resources. If we don't work together, there's going to be problems, and I truly believe that they think that's something that they know that I'll do.
What are some, I know we're always concerned now, I mean, money's always a big problem, tax, everyone's talking about taxes and how we get the economy moving again. What are some of the things that you think that you could do as Oakland County Sheriff as far as, you know, being more efficient with dollars and, you know, maybe making the budget, the dollars that we do have, the resources that we have, you know, work better for the county residents?
Well, I know right now, and I know people aren't going to want to hear this, but there's over 140 take-home cars at the sheriff's office. Now, in recent weeks, they have attempted to put a policy out that says
so
that...
explain what a take-home car is.
A take-home vehicle is either
it seems
a marked...
self-explanatory.
Yeah, sorry. Either a marked or a semi-marked vehicle that belongs to the Oakland County Sheriff's Office, a detective vehicle that officers actually take to their residence instead of... When I worked in Oakland Township, when I was a substation commander, instead of me driving my own personal vehicle to Oakland Township and then getting in a county vehicle for any business that I had to do, I was actually allowed to take that vehicle to and from home. As an investigator, one of the things that we were allowed to do is take that vehicle anywhere that we were, because you're always on call. Now, I know that this current administration recently has said, okay, some people are not going to be taking their vehicles home anymore. However, there's ways around it. Instead of an officer who, let's say, works down in Pontiac, okay, and instead of him driving his car from, let's say, Brandon to Pontiac, they're going to let that investigator drive his car to the Brandon substation. So really, they're still driving their vehicle, but not as much. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, so how
So they're going to drive to Brandon and drop their car off instead of their actual duty station is in Pontiac. They should be driving to Pontiac and picking up the vehicle.
Okay, so that's the change.
So one of the first things, and I know that this current union has been looking at that also. I mean, I just talked to the undersheriff from Midland County last week. Every single person in Midland County, with the exception of the sheriff, has to leave their take-home vehicle at the office. I mean, this is not anything that's over the top. This is what a lot of law enforcement agencies are doing because gas is so expensive, resources are so expensive. You know, every extra mile that you drive that vehicle, there's a chance that that vehicle could get in a collision, and there you go. Now we're starting to pay, you know, to repair. I mean, it happens. You're in rush hour traffic, you get some, I mean, it just, the chances, you know, police officers get in accidents and everybody says, oh my gosh, you've been in so many accidents. When you get in a car and you drive 8 hours a day, the chance that you're in an accident, it heightens because you're in a vehicle more. So the longer and more you're in a vehicle, but besides that, we have deputies that work at the jail that when they get to the jail and let's say we have a hospital watch going on, these are officers that actually have to drive their own personal vehicle to the hospital to go to a work location, and they really shouldn't be because there's no vehicles available. So I really think that's a start, you know, many other ways, but I think that would be one of the first things I would look at.
Good fiscal responsibility. There's been some issues in the Sheriff's Department about cooperating with other law enforcement agencies. Can you share with us what those issues are and maybe give us some examples of how you would solve some of those cooperation issues with other law enforcement agencies?
Well, I think, you know, it comes down to, again, everybody, and not just the Sheriff's Office, there's a lot of law enforcement agencies out there that it seems to me that people want the credit. If something's great happens, people want the credit. And I think we need to stop worrying about whose name's on something, whose idea it was. We need to look at really best practices, not only in Oakland County, in Michigan, but across the United States. If there's, things like I said, I talked to the undersheriff in Midland County. They're stopping take-home cars. They're making sure that every officer at the end of the day turns their light switches off and shuts their computers down. It's little things like that you can, like how simple is that? But not reinventing the wheel. We're going to have to work together. Our aviation unit, for instance, there's a Michigan aviation cooperative that the state police, the National Guard, the Coast Guard belong to. And if, for instance, there's a situation where you would need the helicopter, okay, somebody calls the state police for something in Monroe County, but there's not a close helicopter, so now this helicopter, let's say the state police helicopter, has to fly all the way through Oakland County to get to Monroe County. What they would like to do is to have us be in this cooperative, so if the state police has a situation where they need an aviation asset, they can call the sheriff's office. The closest aviation asset would go, which would save resources, save gas. Fuel in a helicopter is about, it costs about $300 to $400 an hour to run. Let's get the closest law enforcement. It doesn't really matter who it is. When somebody's drowning or somebody's lost, you want the closest resource. So let's get the closest resource. Let's belong, but for whatever reason, this sheriff's administration does not want to belong to this asset with the state police.
So another change we could make.
Another change we could make.
With Jane Boudreau as Oakland County
Absolutely,
Sheriff.
absolutely.
Okay. Well, there's also been some issues regarding hiring and promotional practices within the Sheriff's Department. Can you share some of those issues and how you'd go about solving them as if you took over next? I assume it's in January would be when you would take over.
January 20th. Again, the Sheriff's Office is a very political place, and one of the biggest complaints, and I've heard, and I've taught at the Oakland Police Academy for probably 15, 18 years, and people feel like if they don't know somebody in the Sheriff's Office, they can't get in. And I've met a lot of great officers that have come and applied at our department and not been able to get hired, but gotten hired somewhere else. And you watch them as their career flourishes, and you're wondering why didn't we hire that person? The promotional process. We have people that hire into the Sheriff's Department that have never worked a day at corrections or patrol services in their life, brand new, rookie, and some officer who you have watched that has been working so hard ends up finishing low on the list, where somebody who may be related to or connected or knows someone. And the silly thing is a lot of these people come in and actually brag about it. And that's the unfortunate part, is they know somebody, they're not smart enough to keep their mouth shut. and they come in and they really boast about the fact that they know people, and then you see what happens, people that are getting transferred to divisions where it's clear in the policy that you have to have X amount of time as a particular rank to be able to go to a different work location, but those things are just put by the wayside all the time.
So cronyism kind of from top to bottom.
Right, and what that does is it just smashes officers' morale. Good officers say, forget it, I don't want to test, because there's no reason, there's no point. I don't know anybody, so I'm never going to go anywhere. And I think that that's, again, a reason that we lose officers. And I think,
And it costs a lot of money to train an officer.
Absolutely. It's not cheap. Or working as a training sergeant, having an officer who is not making the grade. I mean, and I'm not saying somebody's stupid, but not everybody's cut out for every profession. Some kid may decide they want to be a doctor and then pass out at the sight of blood. Some officers, some guys, some women, think that they want to be a police officer. And then they get into the profession and they go into, let's say, the jail situation, and they're not ready for it. And you see that. And that's the time when we're doing our field training officer program. That's the time that we really need. We have these officers that are great senior officers that are out there, and they take extra time. It's extra work every single day to train an officer. I mean, and it's babysitting. You got to be with somebody every day and watch their every move and be able to sit down and critique them. And when a field training officer comes to you as a training sergeant and says, this person isn't cutting it, the worst thing that you can do, especially when you have a brand new officer who will go to 3 different officers, okay? And when you have 3 different officers that are telling you this officer is not cutting it, You go to the administration and they say, sorry, there's nothing we can do because they know so-and-so. They're not going anywhere. What a slap in these officers' face. And I've had good field training officers say, I'm not doing it anymore. I don't want to train people because it doesn't matter what we say. It has to matter. Because in the long run, if we start putting people that are not quality people, it's going to hurt us in the end. It's going to be, there's going to be liability in the end, and it can cost the county money. It costs all taxpayers money. We need to get the best of the best.
Well, I agree, because we certainly do need to make our government work better at all levels. Just real quick, we just have a couple minutes left.
Okay.
We talked a little bit in the past about integrity issues at the Sheriff's Office, Sheriff's Department. Can you share just real quick a couple specific examples and how you might handle things differently? Maybe give us one example, because we've only got a minute or two left.
Well, the biggest thing, Bruce, is I don't want everybody who's watching this program think that the Sheriff's Department is a horrible place, okay? It's like anything else. If you're a manager, there's that small percentage that really take the most of your time. The integrity issue, I think, needs to just be about fairness. This is not a good old boys club anymore. There's women. We live in one of the most diverse counties in Oakland County, and I believe our Sheriff's Department needs to reflect it. I think we need to offer testing and promotional process that show that we're an equal opportunity employer and that we're willing to give people that work hard a chance. And I think as long as you're there every day with, like I said, with not just a sheriff who's there with 1 foot in and 1 foot out looking for another job, but I've been committed to law enforcement for 24 years. That's what I want to do. I'm not going anywhere. And I think it just takes integrity, compassion, and I would really focus on moving the department forward and letting them know, you got to know exactly where you stand. You let the officers know, and then they'll perform. They want to do good. So I think it's just about being fair and having integrity and showing that the community looks at law enforcement and wants officers with integrity.
Okay, well, thank you for coming in. I think we learned a lot about the Sheriff's Department this afternoon, and good luck in November. And you want to give your website one more time if people want to visit and find out more?
It's boudreauforsheriff.com, BOUDREAU, forsheriff.com, and people can go in, and we're always looking for people to help or knock on doors, finances, anything that they want.
Okay, well, thanks a lot for coming in.
Thank you so much.